I, female, 34, feel like my fiancé's male, 36. Family is never going to accept me after 10 years together. Throwaway because my future Sil is weirdly active on Reddit, and I don't want this getting back to her. So I've been with David for 10 years, dating for 9.5, engaged for 6 months, and I still feel like his family sees me as some temporary girlfriend he's going to eventually dump. We met at my friend Jake's housewarming party back when I was 24 and working as an admin assistant, basically drowning in student loan debt and living with 2 roommates in a crappy apartment. David was 26 and already had this stable job at his uncle's construction company. He actually listened when I talked, which honestly was a first for me after dating so many guys who just wanted to hear themselves talk. Anyway, I need to explain David's family because they're like a whole thing. His parents have been married for almost 40 years, which they mention at every family gathering, by the way. His older brother Brian, male, 40, now runs the family construction business and is basically treated like God himself by everyone. Then there's his younger brother Tom, male, 33, who works in marketing at some tech company, the only one who doesn't work for the family business. Brian's wife Elaine, female, 39, comes from this super wealthy family and has basically appointed herself as the family matriarch, despite being an in-law herself. I'm treated like I'm barely even there most of the time. The whole family dynamic is so weird. Everything revolves around Brian's approval, like everything. David is constantly trying to get his approval in this way that honestly reminds me of a little kid trying to impress his big brother. David is a grown man with his own life, but around Brian, he turns into this, I don't even know how to describe it, just different. I never told David this, probably should have, but about 5 years ago, we were all at this beach house they rented for a family vacation. I was getting some drinks from the kitchen and overheard Brian talking to David on the deck. He told David I was just a phase and that David could do better with someone from a similar background. I stood there frozen with a stupid soda can in my hand. I never brought it up because I kept thinking David would eventually realize how his family treats me on his own. Spoiler alert, he hasn't. I should probably mention that my own family is kind of a mess, which maybe is why I put up with this crap for so long. I don't know. My parents divorced when I was 12. My mom moved across the country with her new husband like 2 seconds later, and my dad struggled with alcohol for years. He's sober now, 3 years clean. I was basically raised by my grandmother, who passed away 6 years ago. She always taught me to be independent and stand on my own 2 feet. Last Christmas was a perfect example of the BS I deal with. Elaine forgot to include me in the family gift exchange despite the fact that I've been at every Christmas for 7 years. Like, how do you forget someone who's been there for 7 years? When I tried to talk to David about it, he said I was reading too much into things and that Elaine just gets scattered during the holidays. Sure, Jan. She somehow remembered to include her second cousin who showed up last minute, though. I honestly thought things would get better after we got engaged, but they've actually gotten worse. After 8 years together, I started dropping hints about marriage because, are we doing this or what? He proposed on my birthday 6 months ago with this ring that I later found out his mother picked out. Don't get me wrong, it's a pretty ring, but maybe ask me what I like after a decade together. Then came the engagement party that Elaine insisted on hosting. Brian introduced me as David's fiancé with actual air quotes. Who does that? And David just stood there smiling like nothing was wrong. Okay, so last week was basically the last straw. We had this wedding planning lunch that was supposed to be me, David's mom, Elaine, and 2 female cousins. Elaine immediately told me they didn't expect me to come to this one. David's mom looked super uncomfortable, but said nothing. When I asked why I wouldn't be at my own wedding planning lunch, Elaine said they were just discussing family traditions, nothing that concerned me really. I pointed out that I'm going to be family soon, and one cousin awkwardly changed the subject to centerpieces. Elaine took out this folder with venue options, all places I previously said I didn't like. When I tried to suggest alternatives, David's mom said these venues have history with their family. They'd already contacted 3 venues without even telling me. When I pointed this out, Elaine said they were just trying to help since I'm so busy with work. I was speechless. I work pretty long hours at this marketing firm and sometimes feel guilty for not being more available for wedding planning, but I also resent that they're making all these decisions without me. And David keeps telling me to just go with it because it makes them happy. What about what makes me happy? It's my wedding too. The thing is, David is seriously wonderful when it's just us. He's kind and funny and supportive of my career. But around his family, he turns into this completely different person. Super deferential, laughing way too loud at Brian's dumb jokes, offering to help with everything. Sometimes I wonder if I'm making a mistake marrying someone who can't stand up to his family. But then I feel guilty for even thinking that after 10 years together. I love David. I really do. But I'm scared nothing will change after we get married, and I'll be treated like I'm temporary forever. Like, am I supposed to just accept that his family will never see me as one of them? Am I being dramatic? David says I am, but honestly, I don't think I'm asking for that much. Now, for the first update. So it's been a few weeks since my last post. A bunch of you suggested I start writing down specific instances where his family excludes or belittles me instead of just relying on my memory. So that's what I've been doing for the past few weeks. I literally have a note on my phone called David's Family BS, where I jot things down as they happen. It's already embarrassingly long after just 3 weeks. Some highlights. Brian accidentally cropped me out of a family photo they posted on Facebook. Elaine forgot to order me a meal during Sunday dinner at this fancy restaurant. Everyone else's food came and I just sat there like an idiot for 15 minutes while the waiter looked confused. David's mom referred to me as the girlfriend 3 separate times during one conversation, despite us being engaged for 6 months now. Like, how hard is it to say fiancé? I finally sat David down last Sunday evening after we'd had this really nice day together. We went hiking and had a picnic. It was actually perfect. And I tried to calmly go through my list with him. I thought maybe seeing all these incidents together would make him realize this wasn't just me being paranoid. Yeah, that didn't go great. For basically every single thing I brought up, he had some excuse. Brian wasn't trying to crop you out. The picture just came out that way. Elaine probably just forgot to tell the waiter because she was distracted. Mom's just not used to saying fiancé yet. It doesn't mean anything. It was impossible to get through to him. I love him, but he just wouldn't listen to what I was saying. I think part of why this bothers me so much is because of my dad. Growing up, my dad would never stand up to anyone. Not his boss, who was clearly taking advantage of him. Not the neighbors, who kept letting their dog crap on our lawn. Not even the waiters who got his order wrong. He would just smile and take it and then complain to us at home later. It used to drive my mom crazy. I remember them fighting about it all the time before they got divorced. And now I'm basically recreating that exact dynamic with David. Great job, self. Way to learn from the past. Anyway, things got worse at Thanksgiving. We went to Brian and Elaine's for dinner. Of course we did, because God forbid we ever spend a holiday at our place or with my family. They just finished renovating their house. Elaine mentioned the cost 3 separate times during the evening. We get it. You're rich. Cool. Before dinner, I went upstairs to use the bathroom, and when I was coming back down, I overheard David's parents talking. His mom was asking his dad if I should be included in the Christmas card photo this year, and his dad said, well, at least wait until after the wedding, just in case. Just in case, what? In case their son comes to his senses and dumps me after 10 years together. I literally froze on the stairs. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was already upset when we sat down for dinner, and then Brian stood up to give a toast. He named everyone at the table. Everyone except me. It was so obvious and deliberate. So when he finished, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I asked if I wasn't part of the family too. Oh my freaking God, the silence that followed. Everyone just stared at me like I'd done something horrible. Brian did this fake laugh and said of course I was part of the family too. But he said it in this dismissive way, like I was being ridiculous for even asking. Elaine immediately jumped in to change the subject to the food. David just squeezed my knee under the table but said nothing. Not a word in my defense. Tom, the younger brother, was the only one who made eye contact with me, and he looked almost apologetic. Later during dinner, Elaine accidentally knocked over my wine glass while reaching for the salt. Red wine, all over my cream-colored sweater, which I loved and is probably ruined now. No one helped me clean up except Tom, who handed me his napkin. Everyone else just kept eating and talking like nothing happened. The car ride home was intense. I finally just unloaded everything I've been feeling. I asked him if he actually wants to marry me or if he just feels obligated after 10 years. That was mean, I know. I was just so hurt and angry. David got really defensive. He accused me of trying to come between him and his family. That's exactly what Elaine has said before about me. So I know where that came from. I told him maybe we should postpone the wedding until we figure this stuff out, and he completely freaked out. He promised he would talk to his family and fix things. I wanted to believe him, I really did. A week later, he told me he'd fixed things with his family. He was acting all proud of himself, but something felt off about the way he described the conversation. Then Tom texted me asking if we could meet for coffee, just the two of us, which was weird because me and Tom aren't exactly close, but I agreed. We met at this little coffee shop. Tom told me that David had completely misrepresented my concerns to the family. He told them I was just stressed about wedding planning and feeling overwhelmed because my mom lives far away. He never mentioned any of the actual issues I've been having with how they treat me. So now everything is even worse because Elaine has appointed herself my wedding planning savior. She's positioning herself as this hero who's helping the poor, overwhelmed bride by taking over everything. And I mean everything. Last week, I found out through Facebook, not even from David, that Elaine, David's mom, and two of his cousins went to visit and put a deposit on a wedding venue without me. A country club that is absolutely nothing like the small garden venue I've been talking about for months. When I confronted David, he said they were just trying to help and that I should be grateful for their involvement since my own mother lives across the country and can't help much. That hurt so bad I couldn't even respond. Like my family situation is somehow my fault. The only good thing that's come out of this mess is that Tom seems to be on my side. During our coffee meetup, he told me some family history I never knew. Apparently, Elaine had always imagined David would marry her cousin Kelly, who had this massive crush on him for years. This explains so much about why Elaine hates me. Tom said the family has always coddled David as the sensitive middle child, and they're threatened by me because I encourage him to be independent. Oh, and David has started attending family-only events without me to keep the peace. A wine tasting weekend. A cousin's birthday dinner. When did I stop being his family? We've been together for 10 years. I suggested couples counseling, but David refused. He said his parents don't believe in therapy and would see it as an admission that something was wrong with our relationship. So apparently, what his parents think is more important than actually fixing our problems. Cool. The latest disaster happened last week. I came home from work to find boxes of wedding invitations on our dining table. They weren't anything like what we discussed. They were super traditional with gold embossing that I specifically said I didn't want. And the ceremony time was listed as 3 p.m. instead of 4 p.m. like we'd agreed on. I called David at work about the invitations. He said his mom and Elaine picked them out and his parents paid for them. When I said we needed to redo them because they had the wrong time, he said that would be a waste of money, and his mom thought earlier would be better for older relatives. David has started spending more nights at his parents' house, claiming he's helping with wedding planning, but I'm pretty sure he's just avoiding fighting with me. Our wedding is just 2 months away. I've already paid non-refundable deposits for several vendors. My dress is being altered. Out-of-town guests have booked flights. Am I being unreasonable? Is this treatment really as problematic as I feel it is? Sometimes I feel like I'm losing my mind. When it's just David and me, things are so good. But the minute his family gets involved, it's like I cease to exist as a person with feelings and opinions. I don't even know what to do anymore. Now for the second update. So, it's been a while since my last post. 3 weeks to be exact. Sorry for taking so long to update. So in the final months before the wedding, I almost called it off at least 5 times, but something would happen. David would be super sweet for a few days, or Tom would tell me things were getting better behind the scenes, or I'd just remember all the good times we've had, and I'd convince myself it would all work out somehow. Looking back, I was basically a walking red flag myself. I lost like 15 pounds without trying. Stress, couldn't sleep, more stress, had these weird tension headaches all the time. Guess what? Stress! My best friend kept asking if I was okay, and I just kept saying I was fine, because admitting I wasn't fine meant admitting I was making a huge mistake, and I just couldn't face that. Anyway, About a week before the wedding, I found out Elaine had gone and changed a bunch of our vendors without telling me. Like she switched our photographer, who I really liked and had already paid a deposit to her cousin who does photography on the side. Translation, owns an iPhone. And she replaced the band we chose with some string quartet because it was more sophisticated, whatever that means. Oh, and she completely changed the menu we picked, removing basically everything I specifically requested. When I confronted David, he literally said I was obsessing over details nobody will remember anyway. I kept thinking about something my grandma told me years ago. She said how people treat you before marriage is their best behavior, and it usually gets worse after, not better. I tried to ignore that little voice in my head, but yeah, Grandma was right. She usually was. The rehearsal dinner was a complete disaster. Elaine insisted on hosting it at this super expensive steakhouse, despite knowing my dad is a recovering alcoholic, 3 years sober, and would be super uncomfortable at a place where everyone was drinking wine and fancy cocktails. And of course, no one asked me what I thought. Okay, so during the rehearsal dinner, Brian stands up to make a toast while people were still eating. Who does that? And he refers to me as, hopefully, the final addition to our family, with this weird emphasis on final. And several people actually laughed. Then he continued with all these stories about David's ex-girlfriends, including Kelly, Elaine's precious cousin who apparently was supposed to marry David in their fantasy world. I noticed Elaine literally smirking at David's mom during this. Tom looked super uncomfortable and kept looking at me like I'm so sorry. My dad tried to speak next to change the subject, but Elaine interrupted him saying they needed to stick to the schedule. Later, I realized my parents were seated at like the very back table, as far from David's family as physically possible. When I asked David about it, he claimed he didn't notice the seating arrangement. How? And when I suggested changing it, he said it was too late and not worth causing a scene. I was so hurt and angry I couldn't even respond. The actual wedding day started off fine, I guess. My hairstylist was late, which stressed me out. My mom cried while helping with my veil, which was actually a really nice moment. We don't have many of those. During the ceremony, David's vows included this line about joining his family that I later found out Brian had suggested. Even in that moment, I felt like an outsider. But I pushed that feeling down and smiled because what else could I do at that point? The reception seemed to be going okay at first. The food was good, despite the menu changes. People were dancing. Everything seemed normal. And then Elaine announced she had a special surprise, a slideshow of David's journey. The lights dimmed and music started playing. It began with photos of David as a baby, then as a kid, many with Brian prominently featured. Then teenage years, college, and several photos with Kelly. Yes, that Kelly. And then, out of literally dozens of photos spanning his adult life, only 4 included me. 4. Despite us being together for 10 years. The final slide read, "Welcome to the real David's last name family," with this weird emphasis on real, and I couldn't. I quietly stood up and walked outside to try to compose myself. I expected David to follow me, but he didn't. He just sat there looking confused. While I was outside trying not to completely fall apart, I overheard Elaine telling people I was emotional and unstable. I was about to just leave entirely when suddenly this whole commotion erupted inside. Apparently, David's 22-year-old cousin Megan approached Elaine by the laptop and loudly asked, why were there more photos of Kelly than of Sarah? Elaine dismissively said something like, I just used what I had, and Megan announced to everyone nearby that she had seen Elaine deliberately removing photos of me from the presentation earlier that day. It was like everything just exploded after that. All these older relatives started arguing with Elaine, years of family resentment suddenly surfacing. Tom actually stood up and publicly apologized to me for years of silence, which made me cry even more. David finally approached me, looking absolutely shell-shocked. We ended up leaving our own reception early. We spent our wedding night having this intense conversation in our hotel room instead of, well, you know what newly married couples usually do. I was partly vindicated that finally everyone saw what I'd been dealing with for years, but also devastated that our wedding became about family drama instead of us. Not exactly the memories I wanted from my wedding day. The next morning, David was swinging between being furious at his family and wanting to smooth things over. Classic David. We decided to postpone our honeymoon to the Caribbean, losing the deposit, but whatever. It felt necessary. A week after the wedding, David wanted to try one more time to reconcile with Brian and Elaine. He invited them over for dinner, and that was somehow even worse than the wedding. Elaine refused to apologize and instead accused me of turning everyone against them. She told David I'd been manipulating him for years and tried to make him apologize to her. It was absolutely insane. That dinner was finally the turning point for David. He actually saw the manipulation clearly for once. He told them to leave our house and that he wouldn't be in contact until they could respect me as his wife. But there's no neat and tidy resolution here. David still struggles with family loyalty. We started couples counseling last week, something he refused to do before the wedding, but progress is slow and painful. Sometimes he still suggests I should try harder with his family, which shows how inconsistent his growth is. Tom has completely broken away from Brian's influence and has actually become a real friend to me. He comes over for dinner sometimes without the rest of the family, and it's nice to have at least one ally. David's parents are caught in the middle. Sometimes they support Brian out of habit. Sometimes they try to rebuild their relationship with us. Thanksgiving is next month, and we have no idea what we're doing. David mentioned his parents' house, and I literally had a panic attack. Oh, and get this. The photographer, Elaine's cousin, sent us a preview of the wedding photos, and they focus primarily on David's family rather than us as a couple. We're currently disputing whether to pay the remaining balance because the photos are terrible. I'm just tired. So tired. Our relationship was damaged by all this, but we're slowly rebuilding. Sometimes I wonder if I should have walked away years ago when I first heard Brian call me a phase. But I have some hope that David will continue to grow and prioritize our marriage over his family's problems. We're planning a small, private vow renewal ceremony for just the two of us on our first anniversary, as a way to reclaim our commitment without family interference. Something that's actually about us for once. So yeah, that's where things stand right now. Not the happily ever after I was hoping for, but at least people have finally stopped lying to me about how his family treats me. That's something, I guess. Edit. Several people have asked if I'm still in contact with Megan. Yes, we've actually gotten coffee a few times since the wedding. She told me she'd always thought the way they treated me was weird, but didn't feel like she could say anything as the baby of the family. I'm glad she finally did. Edit 2. To the person who asked about my dad, he's doing really well. He stayed sober through the whole wedding disaster despite the open bar situation, which I'm super proud of. He's been really supportive and keeps reminding me that family doesn't have to be blood. That means a lot coming from him, considering our complicated history. Edit 3. A lot of you are asking if I regret going through with the wedding. Honestly, I don't know. On one hand, if we hadn't gotten married, all this family drama might have stayed beneath the surface forever, with me constantly being treated like an outsider. At least now, it's all out in the open. On the other hand, yeah, not exactly the wedding memories I dreamed about.